The air hung heavy over the desolate battlefield, the stench of scorched earth and spilled blood thick in the wind. Smoke curled from craters left by ki blasts, the remnants of a brutal conflict that had torn through the landscape. At the center of it all stood Piccolo, his massive frame trembling with barely contained fury. His emerald skin glistened under the fading sunlight, muscles coiled like springs ready to snap. His usually sharp, calculating eyes were now wild, pupils dilated with rage as they locked onto the figure hovering above him, Goku, his ally turned adversary, his fists still crackling with residual energy. Just moments ago, Piccolo had witnessed the unthinkable. Gohan, his student, his charge, the boy he had trained and protected like his own, lay motionless at his feet, his small body broken by the very man who had once called himself his father. Goku's attack had been swift, merciless, a single devastating strike that left no room for defense. Piccolo's mind reeled, replaying the horror in slow motion, Goku's hand plunging through Gohan's chest, the boy's wide, disbelieving eyes, the way his tiny fingers had clutched uselessly at the wound before he collapsed. "You." Piccolo's voice was a guttural growl, his fangs bared. "You killed him." His words were barely audible, but the sheer intensity behind them made the ground tremble. Goku's expression was unreadable, his usual carefree demeanor replaced by an eerie calm. His dark eyes held no remorse, no flicker of the man Piccolo had fought beside for years. "He was weak," Goku replied, tilting his head slightly. "And weakness has no place in this world." Piccolo's vision turned red. His body surged forward before his mind could catch up, a primal scream tearing from his throat as he launched himself at Goku. His fist rocketed toward Goku's face, every ounce of his fury channeled into the strike. Goku barely flinched, tilting his head to the side at the last second, letting the punch whistle past his ear. Piccolo followed up instantly, his knee driving upward toward Goku's ribs. This time, Goku blocked with his forearm, the impact sending a shockwave through the air. Piccolo didn't let up. His movements were a blur, a relentless storm of strikes, elbows, kicks, hammer fists, each one aimed to kill. Goku dodged and weaved, his reflexes inhumanly sharp, but Piccolo's rage made him faster, stronger. He landed a brutal uppercut that sent Goku skidding backward, his boots carving trenches in the dirt. "You trained him," Piccolo roared, his voice cracking. "You were his father. How could you?" Goku wiped a trickle of blood from his lip, his expression darkening. "Sentimentality is a chain," he said coldly. "And chains must be broken." He vanished, reappearing behind Piccolo in an instant, his foot lashing out in a devastating roundhouse kick. Piccolo barely managed to twist, taking the blow on his shoulder instead of his skull. The force sent him spiraling, but he righted himself mid-air, his fingers curling into claws. "Special beam cannon." He snarled, channeling his energy into his fingertips. The air around his hand warped as a spiraling beam of concentrated destruction erupted toward Goku. Goku's eyes flickered with recognition. This was the same technique that had once nearly killed him. But instead of dodging, he extended his palm, a golden aura erupting around him as he transformed. His hair spiked upward, turning a radiant blonde, his irises vanishing beneath an emerald glow. Super Saiyan. The special beam cannon collided with Goku's outstretched hand, and detonated in a blinding explosion. Piccolo shielded his eyes as the shockwave tore through the battlefield, but when the smoke cleared, Goku stood unharmed, his arm slightly singed but otherwise untouched. Piccolo's chest heaved. He had known Goku was strong, but this was beyond anything he had anticipated. Yet the sight of Gohan's lifeless body flashed in his mind again, and his resolve hardened. He wouldn't retreat. He wouldn't falter. "You're going to pay for what you did," Piccolo vowed, his voice deadly calm now. His muscles bulged, his veins throbbing as he pushed his limits further. His power surged, his aura flaring violently as he unleashed his full strength. "I don't care if you're a Super Saiyan. I don't care if you're a god. I will tear you apart." Goku smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Then try." The two titans clashed again, their battle shaking the earth itself. Piccolo's rage fueled him, but Goku's cold precision made him a nightmare to pin down. Every punch Piccolo threw, Goku countered. Every blast he fired, Goku evaded or absorbed. But Piccolo refused to yield. He would fight until his body gave out, until his last breath, because this wasn't just a battle anymore. This was vengeance. The air was thick with the acrid scent of scorched earth, the aftermath of the brutal battle still smoldering around them. Piccolo's veins bulged under his green skin, his muscles taut with rage as he cradled Gohan's lifeless body in his arms. His crimson eyes burned with an intensity that could melt steel, locked onto Goku, who stood frozen in shock, his own hands trembling. "You." You did this, Piccolo snarled, his voice a guttural growl that sent shivers down even Vegeta's spine. Before Goku could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the battlefield, sending debris flying. From the smoke emerged a figure clad in jagged armor, his aura crackling with malevolent energy. How touching, sneered Turles, his lips curling into a vicious grin. The mighty son Goku, reduced to a murderer. And Piccolo, always the failed guardian. The Saiyan rogue flexed his fingers, his power radiating like a storm. But why stop at one death when I can finish what you started? Vegeta stepped forward, his tail flicking in agitation. Turles. I should have known you'd slither out of the shadows like the worm you are. His fists clenched, but his usual arrogance was undercut by the tension in his stance. Turles wasn't just another Saiyan, he was a wild card, unpredictable and ruthless. Piccolo gently laid Gohan down, his every movement deliberate, his rage simmering beneath the surface. You want to fight? He hissed, his voice barely audible. Fine. But Goku. You don't get to walk away from this. In a blur of motion, he lunged at Goku, his fist aimed squarely at his jaw. Goku barely dodged, the air whistling as Piccolo's knuckles grazed his cheek. Piccolo, listen to me, I didn't mean to. Save your excuses, Piccolo roared, unleashing a rapid volley of ki blasts. Goku weaved through them, but one grazed his shoulder, sending him skidding back. Turles laughed, clapping mockingly. This is better than I hoped. The great allies tearing each other apart. He raised his hand, gathering a swirling orb of dark energy. Let's make it a party. He hurled the blast toward the ground, splitting the earth between them. The battlefield became a chaotic web of shifting alliances. Vegeta intercepted Turles with a vicious elbow to his ribs, but Turles twisted midair, driving his knee into Vegeta's gut. You've gotten soft, Prince, Turles taunted. Vegeta retaliated with a point-blank Gallic gun, forcing Turles to flip backward, skidding through the rubble. Meanwhile, Piccolo's assault on Goku was relentless. He feinted left before sweeping Goku's legs, following up with a crushing stomp that Goku barely rolled away from. You trained him, you called him your son, and you let him die. Piccolo's voice cracked with raw emotion. Goku blocked a devastating punch, his arms trembling under the force. I was trying to protect him, he shouted. Turles seized the distraction, firing a barrage of energy blades at both of them. Piccolo twisted, deflecting one with his forearm, but another sliced across his thigh. Goku barely managed to instant transmission behind Turles, landing a solid kick to his spine. Turles staggered but spun, catching Goku's ankle and slamming him into the ground. Pathetic, he spat. Vegeta, wiping blood from his lip, locked eyes with Piccolo. A silent understanding passed between them. For now, Turles was the greater threat. Piccolo gave a barely perceptible nod before charging, his special beam cannon charging in his fingertips. Vegeta distracted Turles with a flurry of punches, forcing him to block, just as Piccolo fired. Turles barely dodged, the beam searing past his ear, but the distraction gave Goku an opening. He surged forward, driving his fist into Turles' gut, then uppercutting him into the sky. Turles recovered midair, his face twisted in fury. Enough. His aura exploded, the ground trembling as his power surged. You insects think you can challenge me? Dark energy coiled around him like a serpent, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. Piccolo panted, his body aching, but his resolve hardened. We end this now. Goku and Vegeta flanked him, their energies sinking in a rare moment of unity. Turles sneered. 3 against 1? How noble. He raised his hands, and the sky darkened as a massive energy sphere formed above him. Let's see you survive this. The trio braced themselves, their fates hanging in the balance as the battle reached its crescendo. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered rock and scorched earth, the air thick with the acrid stench of burning ki. Gohan's lifeless body lay crumpled in the dust, his blood staining the ground crimson. Piccolo's veins burned with rage, his muscles trembling as he glared at the monster responsible, Frieza, his golden form gleaming under the twin sons of Namek. But it wasn't just Frieza who had struck the killing blow. It was Goku, his own father, who had hesitated at the critical moment, his mercy leaving Gohan exposed. Piccolo's fists clenched so tightly his nails drew blood. You let this happen, he snarled, his voice a guttural growl. Goku's face was ashen, his eyes wide with horror. I thought I could reason with him. Reason? Piccolo roared, his aura erupting in a violent surge of emerald energy. He murdered your son. The ground beneath him cracked as he launched himself at Frieza, his movements a blur of vengeance. Frieza barely had time to smirk before Piccolo's fist connected with his jaw, sending him skidding backward. The tyrant wiped a trickle of blood from his lip, his amusement fading. How quaint. The green one finally grows a spine. The battle erupted in earnest, Piccolo fighting with a ferocity that bordered on suicidal. Every strike was fueled by grief, his attacks reckless but devastating. Frieza retaliated with precision, his golden tail lashing out to wrap around Piccolo's throat, lifting him off the ground. You're strong, Frieza mused, tightening his grip, but strength alone won't save you. Goku, still reeling from guilt, forced himself to act. He lunged, delivering a crushing kick to Frieza's ribs, forcing him to release Piccolo. The Namekian gasped for air, his vision swimming. Stay out of this, Kakarot, he spat. You don't get to play the hero now. Before Goku could respond, the earth trembled. A shadow fell over them as a monstrous figure descended, Cell, his perfect form radiating unchecked power. How touching, he sneered. A family reunion. Frieza's eyes narrowed. You're late. Cell grinned. I was busy absorbing the androids. But now that I'm here, let's make this interesting. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Frieza and Cell weren't just allies, they had been working together from the start. Goku's mind raced. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. If these two united, the universe itself was doomed. Piccolo, however, saw only red. He charged at Cell, his fist aimed for the bio-android's smug face. Cell caught the blow effortlessly, his fingers tightening around Piccolo's wrist. Pathetic, he murmured before driving his knee into Piccolo's gut, then hurling him into a mountainside. Goku knew they couldn't win like this. He reached out with his mind, desperately calling for Vegeta, Trunks, anyone. But the comms were jammed. Frieza laughed. No reinforcements. Just you and your guilt. Then, a whisper of movement. A blade of energy sliced through the air, severing Frieza's tail. The tyrant howled as Dend, small, trembling, but resolute, stood behind him, his healing hands glowing. You hurt my friends, the young Namekian said, his voice shaking but firm. Frieza backhanded him away, but the distraction was enough. Goku seized the moment, unleashing a point-blank Kamehameha that sent Frieza crashing into Cell. The two villains snarled, their alliance fraying. You incompetent fool, Cell snapped. Piccolo dragged himself from the rubble, his body screaming in protest. He locked eyes with Goku. For the first time, there was no hatred, only grim understanding. We finish this together, Goku said. Piccolo nodded. The final assault began. Goku and Piccolo fought in perfect sync, their attacks relentless. But Frieza and Cell were adapting, their power growing with every second. Just as hope seemed lost, a blinding light erupted, Vegeta and Trunks arrived, their auras blazing. Took you long enough, Piccolo grunted. Vegeta smirked. Save your gratitude. The battle reached its crescendo, the fate of the universe hanging by a thread. And in that moment, Piccolo made a choice. He lunged at Frieza, wrapping his arms around the tyrant in a vice-like grip. What are you doing? Frieza shrieked. Piccolo's body began to glow, a forbidden technique, a self-destruct. This ends now, he growled. Goku's eyes widened. Piccolo, no. The explosion lit up the sky. When the smoke cleared, Frieza was gone, but so was Piccolo. The battlefield fell silent. Goku dropped to his knees, his breath ragged. The cost was too high. Then, from the ashes, a single flicker of green energy. A tiny seedling, Piccolo's last act of defiance. The fight wasn't over. And neither were they. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered rock and smoldering craters, the air thick with the scent of burning earth. Piccolo's veins pulsed with rage, his emerald skin glistening under the twin suns as he stared at the lifeless body of Gohan, crumpled in the dust. His fists trembled, his vision narrowing to a single target, Goku, who stood frozen in horror, his own hands stained with the unthinkable. You. Piccolo's voice was a guttural growl, his ki flaring violently, you let this happen. Goku's eyes widened, guilt and shock warring within him. Piccolo, I didn't. Before he could finish, Piccolo lunged, his fist connecting with Goku's jaw in a devastating uppercut that sent the Saiyan rocketing skyward. Goku twisted midair, flipping to regain control, but Piccolo was already upon him, his movements a blur of vengeance. A knee drove into Goku's ribs, followed by a spinning heel kick that cracked against his temple. Blood sprayed as Goku barely managed to block the next strike, his arms shaking under the force. You were supposed to protect him, Piccolo roared, his energy surging as he unleashed a rapid barrage of ki blasts. Goku weaved through the explosions, his body screaming in protest. He had never seen Piccolo like this, his power wasn't just amplified, it was unrestrained, raw. The Namekian's muscles bulged, veins throbbing as he pushed past his limits, his aura burning like an inferno. Goku knew he couldn't hold back. With a sharp inhale, he clenched his fists, his own energy erupting in a golden blaze as he ascended to Super Saiyan. The transformation sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield, but Piccolo didn't flinch. Their fists collided in a thunderous clash, the impact splitting the ground beneath them. Piccolo's tail whipped around, snagging Goku's ankle and slamming him into the earth. Before Goku could recover, Piccolo's hand glowed crimson, special beam cannon. The spiraling energy shot forth, but Goku vanished in an instant, reappearing behind Piccolo with a crushing axe kick. The Namekian barely dodged, retaliating with a point-blank ki blast that sent Goku skidding backward. Breathing heavily, Goku wiped blood from his lip. "Piccolo, listen, this isn't you. Gohan wouldn't want. Don't you dare say his name." Piccolo's voice cracked with fury. His body convulsed, his power spiking erratically as dark energy wreathed around him. His pupils vanished, his irises glowing an eerie white. Unnatural power radiated from him. This wasn't just anger. It was something deeper, something primal. Goku's stomach dropped. "You're tapping into your demon heritage." Piccolo didn't respond. Instead, he vanished, reappearing inches from Goku's face. His fist plunged into Goku's gut, the force so immense it distorted the air. Goku coughed blood, his vision blurring as Piccolo grabbed his face and hurled him into a mountainside. Rocks crumbled as Goku struggled to rise, his Super Saiyan aura flickering. Piccolo raised both hands, his fingers crackling with unstable energy. Hellzone grenade. Dozens of ki orbs materialized around Goku, their trajectories locking onto him. Goku's eyes darted, there was no escape. The orbs detonated in a chain reaction, the resulting explosion engulfing the mountainside in a blinding inferno. But through the smoke, a golden streak shot upward. Goku, battered but unbroken, soared above the devastation, his hands cupped at his side. Haim, ha! The blue-white beam lanced toward Piccolo, who crossed his arms, bracing against the torrent. The force drove him back, his boots carving trenches into the earth. With a roar, Piccolo split the beam with his bare hands, his own energy flaring to counter it. The two warriors clashed again in mid-air, fists and knees colliding with bone-shattering force. Goku feinted left, then twisted into a spinning kick that caught Piccolo's chin. The Namekian snarled, retaliating with an elbow to Goku's spine that sent him crashing downward. Before Goku could recover, Piccolo descended like a meteor, his foot driving Goku deeper into the crater. Dust billowed as Goku coughed, his body aching. He could feel Piccolo's energy still rising, surpassing anything he'd ever sensed from him. He had to end this, now. Summoning every ounce of strength, Goku's aura erupted anew, his hair spiking higher as he ascended to Super Saiyan 2. Lightning crackled around him, his power dwarfing his previous form. Piccolo hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before baring his teeth. "It doesn't matter what you transform into. You're not leaving here alive." Goku shot forward, his speed now unmatched. Piccolo barely blocked the first punch, but the second connected, snapping his head back. A third strike to the ribs forced the air from his lungs. Goku's movements were fluid, precise, each blow calculated to dismantle Piccolo's defenses. Yet the Namekian refused to fall. With a guttural scream, he grabbed Goku's wrist and twisted, flipping him overhead and slamming him into the ground. The earth quaked. Goku gasped, his vision swimming. Piccolo loomed over him, his hand glowing with a final, lethal energy. "For Gohan," he whispered. But then, a voice. Weak, but unmistakable. Piccolo." Both warriors froze. Gohan's fingers twitched, his eyes fluttering open. Piccolo's breath hitched. The rage in his eyes flickered, replaced by something else, hope. The battle wasn't over. But everything had changed. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered earth and swirling dust, the air thick with the scent of scorched metal and ozone. Gohan's lifeless body lay crumpled against a fractured boulder, his crimson-stained gi a stark contrast to the ashen ground. Piccolo's emerald skin glistened with sweat and blood, his muscles trembling with exhaustion and fury. His yellow eyes burned with a rage deeper than any he had ever known, his gaze locked onto the man responsible, Goku, his once friend, now a mindless beast under the control of the demonic parasite. "You'll pay for this," Piccolo growled, his voice a guttural snarl. His power erupted in a violent surge, the ground cracking beneath him as he launched forward, his fist aimed straight for Goku's jaw. The Saiyan barely flinched, catching the blow with his palm, but Piccolo twisted midair, his knee slamming into Goku's ribs with enough force to send shockwaves through the air. Goku skidded back, his crimson aura flickering, his hollow eyes devoid of recognition. "You're weak," Goku hissed, his voice distorted by the entity within him. He vanished in a blur, reappearing behind Piccolo with a devastating elbow to the spine. The Namekian gasped, his body buckling, but he refused to fall. Spinning, he unleashed a point-blank Masenko, the golden beam searing through Goku's chest, only for the Saiyan to regenerate instantly, his flesh knitting back together with eerie speed. Piccolo's breath came in ragged heaves. He was reaching his limit, but he couldn't stop, not when Gohan's death demanded vengeance. Summoning the last of his strength, he clasped his hands together, charging an attack that pulsed with the raw energy of his grief. "Special beam cannon," he roared, the spiraling lance of light screaming toward Goku. The Saiyan dodged, but not fast enough. The beam grazed his shoulder, tearing through flesh and bone. Goku staggered, his body finally showing signs of wear. Piccolo pressed the advantage, his fists a relentless storm of strikes, each blow fueled by memories of Gohan's laughter, his determination, his unwavering kindness. "You took him from me." Piccolo's voice cracked with agony as he drove his knee into Goku's gut, following with a brutal uppercut that sent the Saiyan soaring into the sky. But Goku wasn't finished. His body convulsed, his aura exploding into a monstrous black and red inferno as the parasite fully took over. His muscles bulged grotesquely, his mouth twisting into a fanged grin. "Foolish Namekian," he sneered, vanishing before reappearing inches from Piccolo's face. A fist plunged deep into Piccolo's abdomen, lifting him off the ground before hurling him into the earth with cataclysmic force. Blood filled Piccolo's mouth, his vision swimming. He could feel his body failing, but he refused to surrender. As Goku descended for the killing blow, a flicker of movement caught Piccolo's eye, Gohan's hand twitching. A spark of hope ignited in his chest. With the last of his energy, Piccolo reached out telepathically, his voice echoing in Goku's mind. "Wake up, Kakarot. Your son is still alive." For the first time, Goku hesitated, his fist trembling mid-strike. His eyes flickered between crimson and onyx, a war raging within him. Then, a whisper. Dad." Gohan's voice was weak, but it was enough. Goku's scream tore through the battlefield as he clutched his head, the parasite screeching in protest. "No. I won't let you." The control shattered. Goku's aura blazed blue once more, his eyes clearing as he collapsed to his knees. The parasite writhed, its form flickering between dimensions, but Goku wasn't done. With a roar, he unleashed a Kamehameha infused with his purest willpower, the beam engulfing the entity in a blinding explosion. The creature howled, its essence disintegrating into nothingness. Silence fell. Piccolo dragged himself to Gohan's side, cradling the boy's broken body as Goku stumbled toward them, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Goku choked out. Piccolo's anger faded, replaced by weary acceptance. "It wasn't you," he muttered. The battle was over, but the scars would remain. In the aftermath, the universe trembled at the revelation of such a threat. The Z fighters, once divided by grief and rage, reunited stronger than ever, their bonds reforged in fire. Gohan recovered, his near-death awakening a latent power even beyond his father's. And Piccolo, though he would never forget the pain, found solace in the knowledge that family, in the end, had saved them all. The future was uncertain, but one truth stood clear: their battles had only just begun.